Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us for this Wild Futures AMA. Before we begin, I want to begin by saying that I am coming for you from the land of Nam, on the land of the Wurundjeri people. We pay our respects to the elders, past and present. This is a Wild Futures AMA for Blackbird. Who's Blackbird? Well, Blackbird is an early stage VC who invests in the wildest of ideas right at the beginning. And today we're going to hear a presentation from Michael Tolo and Claire Birch. Michael Tolo is a principal at Blackbird who formerly worked at Playground in the US and helped to pioneer the innovation around the Bay Area. Claire Birch is a scientist in residence and an associate at Blackbird who has a Bachelor of Advanced Science from the University of Sydney and has done work in quantum computing. Our agenda today is we're going to begin with a speech from Michael Tolo, who will go through Blackbird's history in deep tech. We'll follow this with Claire Birch, who will explain a bit more about the scientist in residence role and the vision for Wild Futures. From there, we'll go into some audience questions and we'll wrap up with a conclusion. Without further ado, here's Michael Tolo.
Thanks so much, Michael. And it's great to meet you all, albeit virtually just for the moment. And thanks so much for taking the time to learn more about Wild Futures, the very first startup ideas competition that we've run at Blackbird. We can't wait to learn more about the projects that you've all got bubbling away, but since we are asking you to commit valuable effort, and before we dive into your questions, we thought that it'd only be fair to share a little more about Blackbird as a firm and why we exactly care so much about Wild Futures. So, as Michael so eloquently introduced, Blackbird's a venture capital firm that exists to supercharge founders across Australia and New Zealand right from the beginning of their journey. We have an appetite for excellent technical risk and what's really an obsession for wildheart founders. We want to be the first believers investing from the pre-seed stage, often pre-product, during ideation, and almost always before companies have generated their first revenue. Nothing at all is too early for us. We recognize that in order to make meaningful progress against the grand challenges of our generation, so to fight climate change by designing more efficient battery chemistries, solar cells and catalysts for carbon capture, or to develop in silico techniques for drug screening and to more efficiently bring the next generation of therapeutics to market, we need new tools for understanding the world around us and for bending it to our will. We need to take technical risk and support ambitious, well-considered plans to uncover these secrets. At Blackbird, we exist as a capital and advice to support those founders who are brave enough to venture into the unknown, in the hope that what they find is a path toward a wild future that benefits us all. Moving into a really quick cred plug, we at Blackbird raised our first fund in 2012, and since then have raised 4 funds and backed 88 companies. 6 of these companies are now worth more than $1 billion. So Canva, Culture Amp, Safety Culture, Redbubble, PsyQuantum, and Zoox are all household names that you may have heard of. And 18 companies are worth more than $100 million. This means that 1 out of every 5 investments that we've made is now worth more than $100 million. So what and who do we look for as a founder or future founder? We describe it in this way. We're searching for wild hearts with the wildest ideas right at the beginning. For us, a wild heart is someone who's doing their life's work. And a wild idea is one that's bounded somewhere between improbable and impossible. It's driven by this deep sense of mission, fueled by pure grit and conviction, by founders who never give up and convey this absolutely irresistible sense that they'll find a way somehow, anyhow, with or without our support to achieve their ends. We've got this deeply held belief that the wildest hearts and the wildest ideas become a honeypot for talent, and that the best talent has this uncanny knack for redefining our perception of what's possible. So we support Tim and George at VOW, growing meat from cell cultures, on a mission to bring Galapagos tortoise burgers to market, apparently with a meat so sweet and delicious that it nearly caused the species to become extinct through overfishing by English explorers, including Charles Darwin in the 18th century. We support Hon and Andy from Cortical Labs, building the affectionately named DishBrain, a neuromorphic computing platform that harnesses living neurons to deliver a unique form of adaptive biological intelligence. We support Jeremy, Mark, Terry, and Pete from PsyQuantum, building the first useful quantum computer with a silicon photonics approach that uses light and well-understood optical components to encode and manipulate information. We love quantum computing at Blackbird. We believe that there's potential for it to become the most profound enabling technology of our lifetime, providing us with the tools required to truly understand chemistry and biology for the first time. We support Adam and James at Gilmore Space on their mission to build a world-class launch capability in Australia, with a novel hybrid rocket engine design that will deploy small satellites into low Earth orbit. We support Tom, Waleed, and you at Oscar, building a medical knowledge graph and second opinion tool that will help doctors to make fewer mistakes and save the lives of millions through the elimination of misdiagnosis. A steady hand on the shoulder, if you will, in the form of an intelligent mobile app that will one day sit inconspicuously on the desk of every doctor in every medical practice. We all make mistakes in our jobs, even doctors. Our best and brightest, most dedicated and talented humans who have chosen to dedicate their lives to the enormous task of helping us in our moment of greatest despair. Oscar's about those doctors. It's about offering them the peace of mind to help us when we or our loved ones need them the most. We support John and Eamon at VexEv, using computational fluid dynamics to redefine and dramatically improve the standard of care for vascular disease with ubiquitous light touch proactive scanning. VexEv will allow us to precisely understand how plaque is forming within the vessels and whether vessel walls are narrowing and track progress over time, so months, years, and decades. Providing clinicians with this information early will save lives, limbs, and billions of dollars in treatment costs associated with vascular disease. Now, that's all great, but why have we decided to launch Wild Futures? So before joining Blackbird last year, I worked for an early stage deep tech venture firm in Palo Alto. We invested across themes like engineered biology, so synthetic biology and novel therapeutic platforms, next-gen compute, both classical and quantum, and industrial automation, so robotic warehouses and aerospace manufacturing. And the majority of the founders that we'd meet had come directly from academia and research, with nascent technologies that have been seeded or kernels of ideas that have been developed at universities like Stanford, Harvard, or MIT. It was top-tier academics and research students building companies based on remarkably ambitious technical research, brought to life and to market through the support of venture capital. Access to venture capital at scale and established low-friction paths to commercialize university technology were emboldening academics and shaping their research focus. But arriving back in Australia, it became apparent that although we have historically produced leading global research across a broad range of technical domains, from quantum computing to synthetic biology to physical chemistry, medical devices, IVF and therapeutics, the participation levels of our best academics and research students in entrepreneurship is still low, at least low relative to what I'd seen overseas and relative to the quality of the research itself. We're certain that there's a wealth of great ideas lying dormant in our universities that are ripe for commercialization. So Claire and I are building Wild Futures because we believe that Australia and New Zealand can consistently build teams and companies that are globally successful by any measure. We believe that our top decile performers from any technical domain can stand toe-to-toe with and beat their peers overseas, with the right funding and support. We want to see the next generation built by the best minds of this. To achieve that goal, we need the most talented academics and research students to believe that there are partners who can keep pace with their wild ideas and welcome the complexity, that opportunity to create meaningful change in the world. Wild Futures is designed to encourage and ease the transition of wild ideas from universities into entrepreneurship and to help academics and research students at each step of that journey and right from the very beginning. In partnership with AWS Startups, we're searching for a cohort of university-based potential founders to support, develop, and really show off. So that's enough from me. Now handing off to the wonderful Claire.
Michael, thank you so much. You do such an excellent job of introducing Blackbird. Apologies for the technical flaws there, everyone. We're now recording, and also we have the screen visible, which is, luxury. So the Wild Futures program fits into a bigger picture push within Blackbird and something that we're trying out more generally, and that is expanding, I guess, our deep tech horizons and trying out this much earlier, much newer version of the venture capital of VC investing. I think that the best place to start with this is for me to tell you a little bit about myself and about how I ended up here, because to be frank, it's a little bit of an odd one. So as Michael Liu mentioned, I actually have a science background. I graduated last year from my Bachelor of Advanced Science. I did my honors in quantum chemistry. I designed methods for quantum computing for quantum computers to simulate chemistry in the near term at the University of Sydney. And to be frank, venture capital and finance in general is not where I thought that I would head after finishing my degree. I was actually accepted into a PhD program in quantum computational chemistry overseas. The thing was, I think it's fair to say now, hindsight's 2020, that my heart was not really in pursuing an academic career. And I certainly wasn't sure that the PhD was the right path for me. I was deeply fascinated and concerned with the impact of technology and with the broad impact of fundamental research on our society, and very, very convinced by the importance of that, and also deeply concerned with social equity. So it's fair to say that these were both at the front of my mind in trying to figure out what I wanted to do. So I did what anyone in a similar position to me would do. I went looking for advice. So through a series of network links, I actually serendipitously ended up chatting with Tolo at Blackbird, quite a fun time. After a bit of a back and forth, he described this role to me, the scientist in residence role, and I was completely hooked on it. It sounded like exactly everything that I'd been looking for. I have written here in my notes that it actually brought a tear to my eye, no joke. It was quite a moment for me. You see, as Tolo's described, there's a real dissonance, like a delta between the excellence of Australian and New Zealand research and the impact that that research has on the general public, especially in terms of startups. And to me, that's a huge shame, because it also means that, and this is something that's deeply important to me personally, it's sort of the bee that I have in my bonnet, there isn't this rich, dense ecosystem of creative, fun, impactful science career to be had outside of academia in Australia. And this is a problem because, as we all know, the academic career path is extremely competitive. There aren't enough jobs for our existing PhD students. PhD students should not have to choose between kind of pursuing this incredibly challenging academic path and doing good science. So the question is then, what do we do about it? This is not an unknown problem. It's something that's been being discussed for the past couple of decades, and clearly we haven't come up with a complete solution. So I think the first thing that we've been doing is listening. We've been listening over the past couple of months to researchers, to students. We've talked to tech transfer officers. We've been listening to the people who created the CSIRO On program. We're talking to incubators, to accelerators, to the people who have negotiated or are in the process of negotiating IP out of universities, and also to the people who would not go anywhere near that and who have a lot of preconceptions about VCs. And we're still in the process of listening, and I think it's fair to say, especially with the attitude at Blackbird, that we're not going to stop listening at any point, and we're very ready to basically absorb any opinion as honest as possible that we can. There are a few conclusions that I've come to, and this is where I kind of want to pivot back into talking about Wild Futures and where Wild Futures fits into this. So I've got a few more than this, but I'm going to share the three that I think are most important and that are underpinning Wild Futures as an experiment in this space, us dipping our toes in the water. First is that the role of responsible scaled venture capital hasn't really been defined in the university adjacent startup space. Most of the conversation around university commercialization has focused on government and on policy and on what universities can do. But the fact is that a dense capital ecosystem really needs to come to the table and do so in a really responsible, mature way. And that is what we are trying to do. One part of this role will be, as Michael's actually said, demonstrating that we can speak the right language, that we can come to the table technically. And that is one of the excellent things that Blackbird offers. That's part of my job. It's also repairing relationships that have been broken in the past and rebuilding trust, especially with academics and with university tech transfer officers. Secondly, the university community is really disconnected, especially from the deep tech startup community. It's also, I think, quite fair to say that the deep tech startup community, especially at the very early stage, hasn't quite reached critical mass in Australia or New Zealand. And so one of the things that we do best is building community density and is trying to be a node very much within that community and then allowing other people to connect up as well. And so transparently, that is one of the things that we're trying to do within the Wild Futures program. It's bringing people, opening up our network to a select cohort of people of excellent teams with the view to actually increasing the density of that early stage deep tech startup community. Thirdly, researchers really do need support from very early on along a commercialization pathway, really right at inception, which is why we've gone for this startup ideas competition, through development and negotiations, and then onwards. And this is something, again, that I think Blackbird does incredibly well. We are all about founders, and we are all about helping you to ask sort of the right questions. And quite transparently, Michael and I want to be the people that, you know, not just in the context of Wild Futures, but when you have an idea and you think that it might be commercializable, that, you know, instead of looking up and looking around and not knowing who to talk to, we're totally open to just having a conversation and sharing our expertise. And not that mine is somewhat limited. I have I can speak the technical knowledge. Michael's is quite dense, and helping you to flesh out those questions and form a path forward. So there's a huge amount of money and support available outside of the academic environment and especially globally, but we really need to clear the path to it. So that's what we're doing. It's what Blackbird does best. We're trying to figure out the best way to do it for academics currently. So we're still listening, and we acknowledge that there's differences in the way that accelerators and commercialization programs have run versus what they need to be in order to support academics best. And research students best. So that's also something that we're experimenting with at Wild Futures. So the goal of Wild Futures, and what I'm really excited about, is to find a cohort of excellent ideas, excellent people to lift up as exemplars and to show off and to really throw the whole book at in order to bring them to commercial acuity. And so we are designing this sort of bespoke program that will depend very much on the cohort that comes through. And I think I'm just super excited about it. So maybe we dive into some questions now. How does that sound, Michael, Lou?
That sounds fantastic. So just to reiterate, all questions, I'll be taking them mostly from the Slido. So I can see a question here that's been asked. What's involved in the selection process and what are you looking for?
I'll take this one if you want, follow. So as many of you would know, selection process starts with a written application. You want to bring together a team of people. The only requirement on that team is that at least one of the members is a student at an Australian or New Zealand university. That means that they can be an undergraduate, postgraduate, domestic, international, full, part-time, we don't care. Just one of them needs to be, needs to do that. And then applications close on January 17th at 11:59 p.m. From there, we will narrow it down. We will have a set of judges. They'll narrow it down to a group of about 20. And we'll go through a short interview process, and then we will basically compile a set of the best mentors that we can find in the Blackbird network for the cohort and allow them to pick the team that they would like to work with based on interviews and based on that application. So then you get this person who is bought in to it. The application has two components. The first is asking about the actual idea. And we've tried to give you an opportunity to show off in that. So there is actually a question where you can upload whatever sort of supporting documentation you want. And then tell us, if we only looked at one, which would it be? It's not that we're only going to look at one, but we're trying to get you to pick. So that's an opportunity to show off, all right? That can be research papers, it can be an interpretive dance, it can be absolutely anything, but it's meant to be open. The second part is on the founders themselves. So it's on the caliber of your team. And that's less about your team's experience or, whether you have corporate backgrounds or whatever. It's much more about the character and the motivation and the reasons why you think that you are the best person to solve the problem and to bring the technology that you're trying to bring to market. Sanjay, there are not extra points for it. Well, maybe. It depends on who's on the judging panel. So that's that. So it's based on the content, but also on the team itself, and we care quite deeply about the people on that team.
Wonderful. Next question is, what exactly is happening in the program?
It's a secret. So the program is an 8-week program. There are, in each week, you can expect to have a session with a mentor who is your sort of team mentor. And you can also expect to have a content session that will be not tailored to your particular idea, but tailored to the cohort, which is why I can't tell you, week on week what it is, because it will come down a little bit to that cohort itself. Blackbird and StartMate have an exceptional background in running very valuable programs, not only for founders and for teams, but also for individuals at all stages. So insofar as I can guarantee that it's going to be great, there's that. The only other thing that I would say is that in terms of an in-person or face-to-face commitment, you're looking at no more than a couple of hours a week. But given that it's a competition, it really is up to you how much time you spend on that. And we would expect, a fair amount more time than that on your own time, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. So question from the audience here. Does a supporting doc research papers have to be from research we conducted, or can the research paper be one that we find that supports our startup idea?
I can jump in there. Definitely the latter. Any material that supports, the idea that you're looking to explore as part of the program is completely fine by us. So certainly don't feel constrained.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Are you just looking for deep tech ideas?
A great question. No. We have a strong focus on deep tech ideas because we think that it's been underserved, and we think that that's my background, that's my technical expertise, and we're trying to challenge ourselves in that space. We're also trying to broaden Blackbird's reputation. Michael talked about all of our fantastic founders in deep tech. We've invested in everything from cellular agriculture right through to quantum computing. I'm sorry about the background noise if you can hear that. So no. We're trying to bring about, we're trying to highlight the deep tech. But if we had a really exceptional software company, if we had some really wonderful ideas coming through on that front, we would not be averse to letting them into the program. We're totally open to it.
Right. What is the maximum and minimum number of team members you can have?
There's no maximum, no minimum. Preferably, we're trying to support teams. So if you are a sole founder, it would be preferable if you found a co-founder, but we would be open to if you were exceptional again.
Mm-hmm. Would you support those ventures that are more impact-driven as opposed to just being a wild sort of venture?
What do you mean by impact-driven?
I could add to that. I think, we're looking for ideas that are consequential. And we think that, ideas that tend to fall into the bucket of impact can absolutely be consequential, by our definition. So, again, we'd encourage you not to be constrained. If you've got something that you believe can change the world for the better, then absolutely that's an application we'd love to see come through.
Did you have something you want to say there as well, Claire?
No. There's a lot of questions coming through also on the on the Zoom chat.
No worries, I'll get to those soon. Can you share the kinds of idea stage or pre-seed ventures that Blackbird has invested in?
So interestingly enough, every one of those companies that I showcased earlier, we invested in when it was essentially at the ideation stage, other than PsiQuantum. PsiQuantum would be the only outlier. So, the answer is that actually the majority of companies, the vast majority of companies that we invest in, we back the founders before a product exists or before necessarily a technology is mature. So when we say investing right at the very beginning and that nothing at all is too early, we totally mean that.
Mm-hmm. Right. So 2 questions here that are in a similar vein. If we're due to graduate in February, does that mean we're ineligible? And at what point do we need to be enrolled in university? Is it when we apply, or do we have to be in university throughout the entire process?
A great question. My very sneaky answer is that you just need to be enrolled when you apply, preferably further than that, but just when you apply.
Mm-hmm. Great. What do investors and accelerator programs look for when they are evaluating whether company founders have conducted interviews for product market fit?
Well, that's a Michael question.
Sorry, I missed that, Michael.
What do investors and accelerator programs look for when they are evaluating whether company founders have conducted interviews for product market fit?
So it's a totally qualitative answer, but we want to feel as though you deeply understand the precise problem that the product or technology that you're building is solving. Mm-hmm. It's absolutely a feeling, but it's this extreme depth of understanding. And often that understanding, can be born out of, a founder having felt the problem themselves, but equally, it can be developed over time through, many, many customer interviews. But we think of it as a secret. So, your framing of the problem and your framing of the solution is a secret about the world that you have that no one else has. So maybe in the context of that framing, that's how we tend to articulate it. But it's depth of understanding of the problem and a real feeling that you understand the pain that that problem causes for customers, potential purchasers of the technology.
Wonderful. So another question here, just from the Slido. It sounds like you're quite interested in working with academics and university IP. So how come Wild Futures is just for students?
Sorry, I was answering questions by text. This is very naughty of me. Can you please ask the question again?
That's okay. So it sounds like you're very interested in working with academics and university IP. How come Wild Futures is just for students?
Such a good question. So the Wild Futures program is actually in partnership with Amazon Web Services Startups, which makes it the Australian New Zealand arm of the AWS Startup APAC competitions, which is very exciting. That means that as part of this, you also become connected into the AWS network and into their APAC global network of other young founders. They have a focus on students. Now, this actually does fit quite nicely, though, into the way that we're thinking about this problem. We are super excited to work with established academics and to hear about their wonderful ideas and to delve into the IP side of things. But we also recognize that academics in Australia, researchers in Australia, especially when they're established, don't have that free movement between research and industry. There isn't a revolving door that allows them to move out and back in. And also that when you've kind of, when you're established academic, there's reasons for that. The academic career path is the academic job is a wonderful one in many ways. You may not want to move on from that position. With that in mind, we have strong faith in like the next generation of research talent. So in PhD students, in EMCRs who might not want to continue into full-time academic work, and we see them as great potential founders. I think this is something that I could actually talk about for days, and if anybody wants to chat about it, I have time. I think that the skills required and the skills that you pick up in a PhD and in your early stage research career are genuinely very similar to the skills that you would need to thrive in a startup environment and to found something fantastic. There's leadership, management, ideating, being creative, and being, a word that I hate, but a real hustler. And so insofar as even though AWS requires it, it's something that we definitely believe in and aligns with the way that we're thinking about this problem. Does that answer your question, do you think, Michael?
Sounds quite good. A kind of a lead on from that is from Caitlin here, is how can universities best support this program?
Love that question. So we have a couple of we've connected with most universities, or with several of them on this already. So a lot of universities are already aware of this, and a lot of university incubators and tech transfer processes, offices are not so much the TDOs, but the incubators are really aware of this. So the best way the university can support an applicant is either by supporting them during the application process, or by providing them support throughout the program through their standard paths. So the current state of the environment is that we've got something like 39 universities in Australia and New Zealand, and like 79 incubators and accelerators. And there's a whole host of really wonderful, exceptional people who work in those. And so universities can provide support along the standard pathways that they would along those. Nanisha, you can absolutely reach out via email if you have more queries.
Fantastic. What would you want to see achieved in this 8-week period?
It depends on the state of the idea coming into the program. If it's an incredibly raw idea and incredibly very early stage, very, very deep tech, I think that the view would be that you come out with a strong startup network, an idea of the people that you would need in order to support you further along the path. And not necessarily like a go-to-market strategy, but certainly a better understanding of the differences between a technology and a product, and how your technology would actually fit into that product space. It's hard to say exactly because, as I think has become clear, we are incredibly open to all sorts of ideas and to things at all stages and to teams of all compositions. We're really trying not to constrain here. So it depends on the team itself. Is that fair to say, Tolo?
Absolutely. So we expect that there'll be a pretty wide range of ideas at different maturity stages. And so part of the mentoring is actually adapting, the advice to, the relative maturity of the idea. So, different outcomes for different teams, but that's all part of the process.
Mm-hmm. Great. So we've got 2 questions here. They're in the vein of almost what happens beyond Wild Futures. So one here is just about what size sector you usually take in return for early funding, which I imagine will be variable. Another one from Zoom here is saying that if he's got something that he thinks will need like a really long time, a great idea, but only a really long time to come market and develop, what would the pathway to getting that kind of support look like potentially?
I'll leave both of these to Tolo.
So starting on the second of the two, It's funny, but not surprising that actually many of the most consequential deep tech ideas do take a long time and do require a lot of capital to build the version of that technology that is, most meaningful. So, we don't see either of those things, so time nor capital, as an impediment. They're just problems that we need to solve, and, they're variables. So what we do is we think about, how can we, in conjunction with founders, build a series of technical milestones and product milestones that might be met over time that unlock different series or different pools of capital. So, we take what is, maybe a 5 or 10 year journey, and maybe tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars of capital over the journey, and break it down into smaller bite-sized pieces that incrementally de-risk the project and incrementally over time. So it's really just turning a large, amazingly consequential problem, breaking it down into little small sprints almost, and then delivering systematically on each. So, it should absolutely not be an impediment. The only barrier is how consequential an idea can you define and how much support can you rally around you. And what was the second question in that tranche, Michael?
No, I think you've got both, because the second one was really just asking, like, how does it look like to be able to,
I think it was the first question that you asked about early stage funding, how much we know from early stage funding.
Yeah, so that is extremely variable. So it is unhelpful for me to say that it depends case by case and depending on the relative maturity of the idea and how capital consumptive that idea is over time and the path to the technology itself being de-risked. But it's absolutely a conversation that we can have, and we can provide you some framing through the program about what market standard is, what we tend to do across the portfolio, to help you as potential future founders, go into fundraising discussions better informed and better equipped.
Mm-hmm.
I've been answering some of these questions by writing for the record. We just had a couple of questions come through about, like, what if you had a technology that was currently undergoing a patent process, or that was maybe a trade secret or needed to be protected. I've had this question a couple of times through emails as well, and I've said the same thing every time. We're really happy to sort out an NDA for the process, for the application process. There's definitely an element of this where, part of this is that we want to platform people. So if you're intending to be in like deep stealth mode during the program, that might be a little bit difficult because we really want to celebrate these founders and these ideas. But in terms of the application itself, and then in terms of like protecting and keeping certain things quiet, we're definitely happy to do that. You'll just need to get in touch with me personally, but you should have my email, and it'll go out in the chat at the end of this.
Mm-hmm. Great. Is Blackbird also more widely interested in being approached with ideas from academics, whether they be from universities or polytechs, outside of just the Wild Futures umbrella?
Yes.
Absolutely, and always.
I think that, so part of this as well is that, like, a lot of the people who are here because I sent out just so many emails last week, and I'm really sorry about that. Like, I'm not actually very sorry, but I feel kind of gross and dirty for doing it. We're very keen to just, like, if you have an idea, if you have questions, we have time and we're so happy to answer them. It might not be an immediate answer because my inbox is currently hell, but we want to be the people that if you have an idea and you look up and you don't know who to talk to, you can come and talk to Claire and Michael at Blackbird. We're happy to listen.
Mm-hmm. Great. What if a team is comprised of undergraduate students who do not have extensive research experience? Is Wild Futures still suitable?
Heck yes. Absolutely. Easy answer. Absolutely. I think the big thing you should be getting out of this is no constraints. Also, my general life motto is better to ask forgiveness than permission. So if you want to push it a little bit, please do.
Great. Is there any more information about the Wild Futures seminar / networking night on the 15th of December?
Such a good question. No, not at this point, but there will be.
Mm-hmm. Great. So one here. To clarify, is Wild Futures targeted mainly at PhD, HDR, and EMCR students as opposed to undergrads, which I think might have been answered already?
So no, it's not. It just so happens that that is, that's kind of I call it the Office of the Scientist in Residence, which is maybe giving myself a little bit more professionalism than I deserve. So that part of the vision and that idea of like deep tech, we think that PhD students and academics have been underserved by venture capital. And so that's where that fits into like mandate, I guess, and our vision there. At the same time, there are so many exceptional undergrads with fantastic ideas. They're not necessarily deep tech, but also, you know, deserve to be lifted up. And we're trying to give them the path to do that as well. So please do apply. We're just talking more about this because I guess it's kind of my I don't know what the word is. It's like
expertise.
My obsession.
Yeah.
No, but please do apply. And I mean, Blackbird has this fantastic stable, not only of deep tech, but also of software companies, which is such a fun way to put it because mostly people think about it the other way around. And we certainly know how to support software companies.
Great. Can published research be used to help bolster an MVP in progress? How developed should an MVP be during early discussions?
Go, Michael.
The first part, absolutely. And then the second, you know, again, applying the lens of unconstrained thinking, you know, you don't need to have an MVP of anything in order to apply. You don't need to have developed an MVP of anything by the time the program ends. All we're doing here is about helping you to incrementally build out or flesh out your idea. So nothing at all is too early. I can't say that strongly enough.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
We've had like people approach who are like, I have an idea, like very much early stage idea. I think that it would be possible to do this thing. And it's good if you like reach out and you want to chat about things and you ask questions. And we can sit down and have a chat about it and what it might look like and I guess support you in the application process. But it can be, as long as it's like backed up, as long as it's not like, I think that I can do teleportation based on vibes, I think that you should be fine.
Wonderful. What types of team members can we have? Do they need to have equity or could they be employees / advisors, etc.? And who can attend the 8-week program? So for instance, does a team lead always need to be present?
Do you want to answer the first part of that, Tolo?
Yeah.
I can do the second.
Yeah, sure. Anyone can be part of your team. We actually expect that most of the teams who apply won't have a company and won't therefore have distributed equity formally to team members. So, we're looking for teams to apply who have who aren't even yet at the stage of forming a company or formally establishing a venture. Nothing is too early.
With respect to the second part, which is who can actually attend the 8-week program, does the team lead always need to be present? We have the expectation that your team will participate in the majority of the program. That doesn't mean, like, we acknowledge, especially, so say you're doing like a synthetic biology one and your team is like 10 people strong because you did the OSCE Bio Challenge and that's the size of the teams. We don't anticipate that at every single meeting you'll have all 10 or even a majority of the 10. But there should be like a core unit that gets a cohesive view of the program, just like you would any other course.
Mm-hmm. Great. Will this program support international students or only residents? Good one.
Yes, it's on the website.
Fantastic. Is there any stage of startup that would be considered too late for this program?
Great question. So we ask that you use your discretion in this case. It is an ideas competition. So it can be a recently built tech-based startup, Rashid, but it has to be quite early stage because you won't get much out of the program if you have, if you're already at the point of having like a pretty, even like a strong MVP and you have a solid understanding of like the way that you're going to go to market and all that fun stuff. We're trying to go early there. I see here as well, if we're looking at the same question, Michael, are there other supporting programs run by Blackbird for recently built technology-based startups? The answer is not by Blackbird, but by StartMate. There is. StartMate runs an accelerator program. They just finished up a round of like an application round for the next round of people that will go through that. It's pretty competitive, and there is investment involved. It's an excellent accelerator. I am not paid to say that, but it is fantastic, and I would highly recommend applying for it.
Mm-hmm. Great. Does Blackbird intend on running this program annually?
Only if this one goes really well.
Wonderful.
But in all seriousness, this is, I mean, yes, basically, but it depends on how well this one goes. Is that fair to say, Tolo?
Yeah, I think so. I think, the totally unfiltered version of the answer is that, we're looking to validate a hypothesis here. And, we believe very strongly that there is a bunch of amazingly talented academics and research students in universities who want to participate. If and once we've validated that hypothesis, we hope to build out and scale this program, and maybe build out other programs to accompany it over time. So, this is our MVP. This is us testing the premise.
Yeah.
Great. What is a time commitment over the 8 weeks, and what's a rough date for the demo day if you have that?
Yeah, so time commitment in like face-to-face, I think you can expect no more than a couple of hours a week. You're seeing sort of an hour, maybe 2 of content, and then probably half an hour to an hour of mentorship, depending on the mentor. Some people are just busier than others. And one of the great value things in this that I kind of breeze past, but is on the website, is that those mentors will be like strongly VC aligned. So because, I mean, you want to mentor in the VC space because they offer you that global perspective and that emphasis on product, and allow you, like, teach you to speak the language. And we will be prepping all of our mentors to work with people who come from a university or a polytechnic background. So we're kind of trying to meet in the middle. So about 3 hours, give or take, face-to-face, maximum face-to-face. The rest is up to you. And I will emphasize this, as I have in every other conversation I've had about this, that it is a competition at the end of the day. And how well you do depends on how well you use your time and how well you use the resources that we give you. There is, I completely failed to make this announcement. Congratulations to me. Funding on the website says that, or the prize on the website says that we're at $5,000 cash prize. But I'm very excited to announce right now that we are actually increasing that cash prize to $15,000 for the winning team. That is completely equity free. It's a cash prize, thanks to Amazon Web Services Startups. And it will be the, so you're welcome to use it towards your endeavor, but you're also welcome to keep it yourself. So there is an incentive to put in the hours, to work hard as a team, and to come through. Don't have an approximate date for the demo day. The program will run in approximately March to April, which places the demo day at the end of April or early May. It depends a little bit on Sunrise, because one of the other prizes up for grabs is for this winning team, that winning team gets to present at Sunrise Festival. Now, Sunrise is Australia's premier startup festival, and I cannot stress enough, it's actually a really big deal. Previous speakers have included, Mike Cannon-Brooks, Melanie Perkins. It will be sort of you were saying this before, Michael, the who's who of the Australian and New Zealand startup space. And it really is the best platform that can be given in this area. So that's in May-ish, but we're just settling the final dates for that, and then we should have set dates for everything else.
Wonderful. Is this going to be run in person or online? And the same question with the seminar and networking nights, are those going to be in person or virtual?
They're going to be virtual. Everything will be virtual because we acknowledge that the nature of work has changed a little bit and we want this to be open, and it needs to be open to all of Australian and New Zealand people, provided those teams have one student on them. So definitely virtual. That doesn't mean that there won't be opportunities to catch up in person. It just depends on the distribution of the teams, but we're not thinking about that right now.
Mm-hmm. No worries. So I think maybe just 1 or 2 last questions here. Here's one. So what if you've got an incredibly wild idea, but you're not a uni student as part of your group? Is there any way you'd be able to assist to find a suitable student who's looking for an idea to work on?
We might be able to. You should get in touch with me. So you should email me. Again, I'll put my email in the chat at the end of this, and I'll see what I can do. Cannot make promises. And I would always recommend Twitter and LinkedIn. And also just maybe get in touch with like a researcher who might have a student. You never know. But yeah, email me.
Also, never underestimate, the value of a cold reach out.
Oh yeah.
It's often amazing what you can get back, and as soon as you expose yourself to the serendipity of meeting someone that you've never met before, but seems aligned to the mission that you're looking to take forward.
Great. So perhaps we'll make this one the last one. Somebody is incredibly excited. They are asking, can I apply with more than one idea?
Well, there's nothing stopping you. You can't get in with more than one idea though. And to be frank, love the excitement. Nothing's stopping you. I wouldn't, maybe there's some value in like settling on one and doing a really, really good job of it. Just as a general piece of life advice. Content is like actual substance is super important. And also just in terms of bringing a team together, there's, because we're assessing based on team as well, there could be value in that. But yeah, no, nothing's stopping you from applying with like 1,000 ideas.
Fantastic. All right, so that's all the time we have for today for questions. There is a lot more questions we unfortunately weren't able to get to, but I believe, Claire, you'll put your email in the chat.
Email in the chat now, because I can't respond to, like, I don't know who has sent most of these. You should send them through to me on email. Vincent Zhang, who I know has just raised his hand. How do I, sorry, misclick, it's fine. Sorry to call you out. There, Vincent. Yep.
Do we want to go through 1 or 2 more really quick ones, if possible, or you can just wrap up here?
Quick fire.
Quick fire, okay. Team members, should they all be in Australia or can some be not in Australia?
They don't have to all be in Australia or New Zealand. Remember, this is open to New Zealanders as well. No, the team members can be anyone. You need to have a student at an Australian or New Zealand higher education institution. One of them, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Completely transparently, that's meant to be really broad.
Fantastic. So I believe the idea I should provide is my own field of specialty. Would it be okay if I provide an idea that is outside of my field of specialty?
Sure. I recommend that you find people to back you up with it.
Fantastic. Is there any particular type of technology you're looking for?
No, we love it all.
Unbiased.
So
you said I'm biased and then just like muted yourself. I was like,
unbiased. Unbiased.
Unbiased indeed. We'd love to be surprised.
Fantastic. What is a good market research size for potential customers?
If you're doing market research, you're beyond me. Tolo.
It always differs case by case. It's not necessarily judged by the number of interviews that you've done, but the depth of understanding that you can communicate. So I'd use that as your North Star metric.
Fantastic. And just last question, in sense or less, what is the one thing you hope this will do for the Australian tech and startup ecosystem, or for the university ecosystem?
The one thing. Okay. My ultimate goal for this program is to have a set of people and a set of ideas that I can point to, and I can go, look how great this is. We are absolutely correct in thinking that there is true excellence here and great potential here. And therefore we should be able to push on with this and to change the way that things are, lessen that delta, improve the status quo. That's the goal, is to have these like exemplars.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. I enjoyed the session, and this kind of ambition and drive is something that's attractive to you. Please apply on the Wild Futures site. We are looking for these kind of ideas, the wild ones, the crazy things. Want to see it all. I'm not the one dealing with the emails, so I shouldn't be prompting so hard. But flood the inboxes, knock on the door.
Brutal. No, please do. I will try my best to keep on top of them. Thank you, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure. Feel free to get in touch. If you have ideas, feel free to ask questions. We can set up a time to chat.